So now in this lesson, we are going to see how to work on sculpture painting using whipped cream as a medium. So sculpture painting is a gentle technique. You could use any cream that is basically used for frosting the cake. However, whipped cream is one medium. Usually people are intrigued, so I thought we could just use that. However, we are going to use this on the square ganache cake. We could have done that using the ganache as well or cream, but then learning to use this medium will be quite interesting, and I thought we could just do it with whipping cream. So I have the whipping cream whipped up and all the colors ready. I'm going to do some simple flowers and using the sculpture painting technique. So but in this specific lesson, I'm going to show you a practice flower, and you guys will also do the practice flower along with me. And once we have the practice flower done on a cake board, and then we will move on to doing that on the cake itself. Okay, so I have some fuchsia, just two colors, the dark one and the light, and then a bit of avocado has gone. That's a darker green and lighter green, and I'm going to use white color, which is like there's no color added into this whipping cream, and I'm going to mix it up with the darker versions to get the shades in between if I want. So you don't have to have like all the colors right here, because you're going to use the palette knives right here to pick the cream or the frosting and to just smear on the board, and then I'm just going to show you how you're going to scoop it out and then make the petals one by one. And so this is the set of palette knife we have on the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and depending on the size of the cake, now we could just be picking up whichever palette knife. Basically I could avoid this because the edge is like too flat. The rest of all of them have a similar shape, which is like a pointy tip on the top, and so I could be using these both for the size of the cake that I am going to look at. And if you have like a bigger cake, then you could use the same technique and pick up the palette knives, the bigger ones as well. And so this comes as a set of 5, and there are also individual palette knives, and the shapes are quite different, quite sharp, and the base is like quite broad and all that, and each of them give a different look. And if you're so interested in this technique and you want to continue doing quite a bit of different kinds of flowers, then you could explore getting the individual palette knives, and then you will just start to make different kinds of flowers as well. Okay, so I also have the 2 boards. I'm just going to keep the creams away. And now I have the 2 boards. Now one board is in place of the cake, so if I'm going to work on the cake, then I will need another board in which I'm just going to sweep, and then I'm going to collect the cream. Okay, so let me just have this one palette knife, and then that will be the cream that I want to pick up. So this will be the board in which I will start making the petals, so I'm just going to keep that one aside as well. And so we have one board right now. I'm just going to pick up. So now this cream, I don't have to kind of mix it up and then soften it up, and it's made, and then if it is even lying there like for an hour, but just make sure you're putting that in the refrigerator. You don't want to leave the whipped cream right on the counter and then leave it there for an hour or so. If you are working in like a good AC environment, then it is fine. Otherwise you have to whip, color them, and you could also leave it in the fridge. And when you're going to take it out, if it is going to be quite stiff like this, you don't have to go on and then mix it up, because we are going to sweep it down on the board and it is going to be quite fine. So I'm just going to pick a bit and I'm just going to smear it. Okay, like a thin layer. And you could just put in some effort to make sure it is like quite leveled. But once you get the hang of the technique, then you could just go on and maybe do that a bit quickly. Okay, and then now I'm just going to use the palette knife and hold it. Now this is like flat, right, straight to the board here, right? I'm just going to tilt this on one side and then start scraping, and that is going to collect the cream on the back side. Okay, so I'll just scrape some more. Scrape some more. Okay, and there could be a little excess that is getting collected on the other side. I just want to get rid of that. So this part will just be gone, and I will just do it from both the sides. So I'm just scraping on both the sides and have just a bit at the back. Okay, so now if I have to just do one petal, I'm just going to hold it at an angle, the same angle that I had just swept it, and I'm just going to press it down and then just move it towards me. So that will be one petal. Okay, now for the next petal, I'll again continue to do the same. So it will be just sweeping in one direction and removing the excess. You're not going to sweep through both the directions for this particular petal. Now one side, as I clean it, then I could be collecting a little excess on the other side, and that is what I just want to get rid of. And now this is what I will have at the back. The sweeping will happen only on one side, and then for the next petal I just want to start out placing it adjacent to the first petal there. Okay. And then so that will be my second petal. Now continue doing that. So as I'm sweeping, you see there's excess and you don't want that excess, so get rid of that and clean up on both sides, and then we're just going to make the third petal. Now the petals are getting done. We know just one sweep down, we're just going to start having the petals. But now if we have to have it in a circle, right? Now we need to have the petals going on in a uniform circle around, and then we're just going to start building the petals inside. So for which, to have a guideline of a circle, I have the circle cutter set itself. I'm just going to pick out the size that I need. So maybe I'll just use these three sizes on the cake. For now, for the practice, I'm just going to use this circle cutter. So on the cake, if it is the ganache cake or whatever cream cake, then we just use this to go on and then just make a marking using the circle cutter, and then the outline of this cutter is going to be on the cake, and we're just going to follow that. For right now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to, for doing it on the board, we just add some cream on the cutter edge. Okay, so we have the outline done. And I'm just going to follow this outline. So my petals will just come in a circle. So that is the practice that we're just going to do. Now, if you're done and you're not happy with a petal, you could obviously scrape it out and then again sweep it, make it flat and thin. And sweeping it on one side only and then getting rid of the excess from both the sides. Now I'll just follow the outline. I'm just going to scrape it in. Okay, so my next petal will be on the circle. So that will be the guideline that we will follow. So I'm just going to sweep one side, excess removed. Now make sure I'm also overlapping. You don't want to do just giving all the space, like it is not like very adjacent to the petal. You need an overlap. So you just go here. We're just not going to start here. We're just going to overlap, okay, and stay within the circle outline, and that will be your second petal. Now once you have the cream done and over, just pick up some more cream, smear it up, So now for the last petal, I'm just going to switch over to a smaller palette knife to just cover up the gap that is there. So I'm just going to use the smaller palette knife and do the exact same thing. Remove the excess. So that will be my last petal, and then I'm just going to start doing the petals on the inside. So now as you're going to go on to the inner layers, and like we already have a couple of colors in the pink made. Now I could just go on reducing the intensity of the dark color. So for which I'm just going to pick up a bit of the pink and I'm just going to smear it together with the darker pink, and so that is going to give me another shade, a bit lighter. And you could also keep it marble if you wish to. And smear it all again. Sweeping on side and cleaning on both the sides, and then you have the color picked in the palette and it's all whipping cream, and I'm just going to go in and follow the circle and then just sweep down. Now these are going to be smaller petals, but that's fine. We're just going to use the similar technique and then go on around. So you can see the difference here onto this petal that I have done right now and the petals that I had started off here. So the difference is how much of the cream that we are picking up. In case I'm just going to just sweep it a couple of times, and how much frosting I have at the back of this palette knife, and say for example I could just do it here, so you could just take a look. So this is the petal that I would get. Okay, let me just clean this. So this is the petal I just got with the lesser amount of frosting, which is this first petal and the second petal like that. So now if I am looking at having a bigger and a thicker petal, you don't want to have like, you know, very thin petals going on in the middle. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to collect more of the cream at the back. okay, and getting rid of the frosting only on the sides and trying to maintain the quantity of the frosting on the back of the spatula, okay. So I'm just going to sweep on both the sides, and you could see the difference in the quantity of the frosting or the whipping cream that is picked up at the back of the palette knife. And here, when I'm just going to sweep it, now you can see the petal is heavy, and while this petal is quite light, right? So I'm just looking at collecting more frosting at the back of the spatula, and you could see the difference. So it all depends on this factor as well the technique of how you're going to sweep and how you're going to clean up the picked up whipping cream at the back of the spatula, and how much we are going to do and how we are going to sweep as well. So I'm just done with this. Now on the cake, I know now I can't be doing the lesser quantity of the petals of the frosting that I have to just pick up to make the petals. So I would like this part where I'm just going to have a good quantity of the frosting picked up. Okay. So now that layer is done, and I'm just going to go on to another lighter version. So I'm going to pick up some more light pink color, and I'm just going to mix it up. Okay, so I'm just going to start collecting. Like I said, I want to collect more at the back. Okay, so I have quite a bit now. I'm going to go into the inner layer. So just need to quite observe the hand movement. Now let me also just verbally put it across how I'm just going to do that and how I've been doing. But that sweep, as you're just going to the inner layers of the petals, how we're just going to sweep will just make sure how the petals are also going to form. So I have quite a bit now. So I'm just going to hold it like in a position where the palette knife is like quite like a cutting knife, okay. So I'm just going to hold it in that way. So this is how the flat side is facing parallel to the surface of the board or the cake, right? So I'm just turning it right angles. So the palette here, you can see the sharp side is facing up and the other sharp side is facing down, and that's exactly I will just go on to the place where I have to just push it or place the petal, okay. So now at right angles there, I'm just staying there, and obviously you know we can't be doing it here because the petals are not going to be one next to the other. There has to be an overlap. So the overlap is going to be here, and the position in which I have to do this petal is not too inside, because as I'm going to place the petal, turn it like that and then move. And that time, this petal should cover the gap between the layer before, that one circle of the layer before and this particular petal. So I'm just going to hold it at right angles and then turn the spatula towards my right side. Or you could just call it the anti-clockwise. So just turn it upwards. That is simpler, okay. So keep it at right angles, turn it upwards, and as you're turning it upwards, you're just going to touch the board or the cake and move it to the front and take your spatula out. So I'm just going to do that, turning it and touching the cake, and then I'm just taking the spatula out. In that way, I'm just making sure there is overlap and then there is no gap between this particular layer on the previous one as well. Let me do one more. That way you could just closely watch how the petals or the inner petals are being made. First thing is to sweep quite enough. And now I just need to maintain the circle, placing it 90 degrees there and going to tilt it all the way down and then just pick up. And now I am allowed to make a bit of adjustments as well, because it depends on how much we have cleaned at the back, and maybe there is excess on the edges or the sides of the spatula as we are picking up or collecting the cream. Then maybe we'll have a bit of imperfection as the petal just is getting formed, and we could just work it out. Now this one is clean all by itself, because as we just scraped on the sides of the palette knife, it was already clean. And if it is not clean, say suppose we're just having the edge not clean like that, then as you're going to sweep, then the top edge of the petal will also be not very clean. So I'm just going to go near the previous layer, then sweep it down. And so to be able to collect quite a bit of the cream, I am sweeping on both the sides. Now if you just saw, I started with telling you can just sweep it on one side as we formed the outer petals. But now if you need more of the frosting to be picked up at the back of the spatula, then you could just collect on both the sides as well by sweeping through both the sides. Okay, so now I'm just going to the innermost, and now I'm just going to pick up some more of the lighter cream. So as I'm getting near to the center, I'm just going to be a bit more careful, so I just don't damage the petals that I've just been making. Maybe I'll just do with the last petal, because I don't have enough space to keep all of the frosting. I'm just going to cut out some frosting here, and then I'm just going to use just a smaller bit of it so it doesn't damage much. I think the inside, just try to collect just a bit. And now at the end, if you're just not able to create your petals, it doesn't matter. We could just have a blob, and we could use paint brush or even the palette knife itself. Just make a circle. You could just have the center created, just making some concentric circle in the middle. And because whipping cream is a medium where once you've just made, and if you're just going to touch it, we are going to kind of have a little bit of damage, which is quite fine, and that is going to make it also look pretty natural. And if we are going to do the same exact thing using buttercream of any choice, an American buttercream or any meringue, Swiss meringue or Italian meringue, the same thing works, and including ganache. But obviously ganache, if you're working and doing the same thing, then the ganache could be setting up quickly in the AC environment, or then it could be a little more runny. Ganache is a bit tricky to work, but obviously this is the lighter cream to go on the ganache cake. Now you would be doing an exact similar flower with the shades of choice, but then we're just going to try and make it an ombre. Start with the darker shade, and then you just keep mixing up with a couple of shades, and then create the ombre, and then finish up with a flower. And with this, we've come to the end of the practice session lesson. And once you make, and we just have the practice flower approved, and then we will move on to actually making the flower on the cake. So catch you up in that lesson.